Now, this election takes place at a time of acute difficulty and challenge for people in our communities in Scotland, and particularly here in the city of Glasgow. The Westminster system, through a Tory government, has delivered 14 years of austerity, which has harmed the public services, the National Health Service, the education services of our country. And we've done our best in the Scottish Government to withstand that, but damage has been done by Westminster austerity. They've inflicted Brexit on us, which has reduced the number of people who are here able to participate in our economy and made it more difficult for trading opportunities for businesses. It's made it more difficult for young people in this city to be able to move around Europe and to find new opportunities, and for people from Europe to come to this city, as they've contributed so magnificently over the period of free movement. And we've had, as David talked about, the cost of living crisis that's inflicted such hardship on people in these communities who have had to wrestle with the additional challenges of hyperinflation inflicted on us by Tory economic mistakes. They've had to wrestle with the implications of rising prices for food and energy as a consequence of Westminster mismanagement. So, for all these reasons, austerity, Brexit, the cost of living crisis, for all these reasons, the Tory government deserves to be removed from office, and the best way to do that is to vote SNP to remove the Tory MPs in Scotland, all 6 of them at this election. But as we look forward, we've got to look at what does the alternative look like. And that's where I think people in Scotland are likely to be disappointed by the Labour Party that is likely to come into office. Because if we just look at those issues of austerity, Brexit and the cost of living, all the reasons why the Tories should be removed from office, what is it that the Labour Party offers? Well, on austerity, the Labour Party has made it clear that there will be no increases in income tax, no increases in corporation tax, no increases in national insurance, no increases in VAT. They've signed up to the tight fiscal limits of the Tories. They've signed up to tight borrowing. That is austerity on steroids from the Labour Party. On Brexit, the Labour Party is united with the Tories on Brexit. No free movement for the young people of the city of Glasgow or across Scotland to move around Europe and to find their opportunities. That door has been closed by the Conservatives and shut firmly by the Labour Party. And on the cost of living, Keir Starmer is in Scotland today setting out his argument for a GB energy company, although I understand from his broadcast interviews this morning, he's not actually sure it's going to be a company. So there's a lot of questions to be asked there. But what it looks like is that Keir Starmer's proposals on GB energy will not be reducing household energy bills anytime soon, but it will be reducing employment in the oil and gas sector in the north east of Scotland, and that will be a body blow to the Scottish economy. So I think there's every likelihood on austerity, Brexit and the cost of living, the issues that are the reasons why the Tories should be removed from office, the Labour Party is going to disappoint the people of Scotland. So my challenge to Keir Starmer today, as he's in Scotland, is will he commit today to an emergency budget very swiftly after Labour come into office, if the election goes their way, that brings to an end, to a grinding halt, the austerity that has damaged our public services, and commit to invest in the National Health Service and in education. That's what Keir Starmer needs to do, because if he signs up to the continuation of the Tory spending plans, that will be spending cuts, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, of £18 billion in public spending in our health service and in education. So my call to Keir Starmer today is commit today in Scotland to an emergency budget that will end austerity and will bring investment in our schools and in the National Health Service. That's what we need from Keir Starmer today. Now, people also need to know about the SNP alternative. And the SNP alternative in this election is really strong and firmly founded in our values as a party and firmly founded in my leadership of the Scottish National Party. We are committed as a party to eradicating, and as a government, to eradicating child poverty. By the actions of your SNP government, we are keeping 100,000 children out of poverty in Scotland as a consequence of the Scottish Child Payment. That is action to protect children in our society. We're committed to the transition to net zero, and on our record alone, we've transformed renewable energy in Scotland from a position when we came to office, when 20% of Scotland's gross electricity consumption was coming from renewable energy, and that is now the equivalent of 113%. That is us delivering the journey to net zero with boosting employment on our way. Thirdly, we're committed to stimulating economic growth. Growth per head in Scotland has risen faster since the SNP came to power than it has in the rest of the United Kingdom. And in addition to that, we are the most attractive place for foreign direct investment of any part in the UK other than London and the South East. We bring investment into this country. And on renewables alone, in my first week as First Minister, we announced the investment in Ardésir near Inverness. We announced the investment in Nig, the Sumitomo plant, bringing hundreds and hundreds of new green jobs to the north of Scotland, and we want to replicate that around the country. But fundamentally, we believe in economic growth so we can invest in the National Health Service and invest in our schools. That's what we're about. We're about investing in the quality of life of people in our country. And we've also taken the tough decisions to do that. I'm proud to lead a government that's taken hard decisions on tax, where we've asked those on higher earnings to contribute more to the public funds so that we can invest in our schools and in the National Health Service. And if we hadn't done that, Scotland would have £1.5 billion less to spend on our schools and our hospitals if we hadn't taken the tough decisions on tax. So these are the right choices to make in line with the values of people in Scotland. So this election, there's some pretty stark choices. There's a very wide consensus of opinion. We've got to get rid of the Tories. But at this election, we've got to be careful about what replaces them. Because in that choice, people will have to decide whether they want MPs like my colleagues here, who will campaign against the rape clause and the two-child limit, or Labour MPs who are quite happy to lift the cap on bankers' bonuses. These are my colleagues who will rail against austerity, and unless Keir Starmer today commits himself to an emergency budget that will end austerity, that will submit Scotland to more years of Tory austerity of the order that's done such damage to our schools and our hospitals. So the choice for people in Scotland is between SNP MPs who will take Scotland's interests right to the heart of the House of Commons and fight to protect the interests of the people of Scotland, to always put the interests of the people of Scotland first, or Labour MPs who will be taking their orders from a London-based Prime Minister who is committed to Tory austerity. That's the choice in Scotland today. But there's also a bigger choice. There's a choice about whether it is best that decisions for Scotland are made in Scotland. Because on so many different issues where the SNP government has used the powers of the Scottish Parliament to create a better future, a fairer future, a future of better opportunities for people in Scotland, we've demonstrated that decisions made in Scotland are decisions for Scotland. And that's the choice that people in this election have. Do they want SNP MPs who are committed to making sure decisions that are made in Scotland are for Scotland? That want SNP MPs who will protect the interests of the people of Scotland and put those interests first in the House of Commons? That's the opportunity of voting SNP in this election, and that's why I encourage people to do so on the 4th of July. Thank you very much.